My name is Olivia. If you had asked me a couple of years ago how I imagined my wedding day, I would have painted you a picture filled with love, warmth, and a groom who looked at me like I was his universe. As fate would have it, my reality didn't quite align with my expectations. I stood at the altar about to say my vows to a man who seemed like a perfect match on paper. Adam, an average guy with an average job who charmed me with his seemingly kind-natured and sense of humor. I wore a gown that took my breath away every time I looked in the mirror. Elegant yet understated, much like how I saw myself. My father had just walked me down the aisle, a moment we had both anticipated since I was a little girl. He kissed me on the cheek and took his seat next to my mother, who was already wiping away tears of joy. I turned to look at Adam. He was dressed in a traditional black tuxedo, but there was a look in his eyes that unsettled me. A distant, almost vacant gaze that failed to mirror the enthusiasm of everyone else in the room. "You look beautiful," he whispered to me, but his voice lacked conviction. I forced a smile and softly asked, "Are you okay, Adam? You seem a little off," he shrugged. "I'm fine, just a lot on my mind. Weddings are stressful, you know." I nodded, not wanting to create a scene. I took a deep breath as we turned to face the priest. The ceremony began, and my mind started drifting despite myself. Was I making a mistake? Was the subtle tension in Adam's voice a prelude to a life of hardship and disappointment? As the priest spoke, my mind was awash with questions I couldn't answer. "Do you, Olivia, take Adam to be your lawfully wedded husband?" the priest intoned. "I do," I said, my voice tinged with hope that perhaps this was all a figment of my overactive imagination. "And do you, Adam, take Olivia to be your lawfully wedded wife?" There was a brief pause. The congregation held its collective breath, and for a moment, I saw my life flash before my eyes. Finally, he responded, "I do," but the words seemed to stick in his throat. The priest announced, "You may now kiss the bride." As our lips met, the room erupted in applause, but I felt a strange emptiness. Something was amiss, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. The celebration moved to the reception hall, filled with laughter, dance, and toasts to a happy life ahead. Yet, amid the clinking of champagne glasses and well wishes, I couldn't shake the feeling that the man I had just married was a stranger to me. We mingled with guests, smiling for photos, but every time I glanced at Adam, he seemed lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" I finally asked him as we sat at our head table. "Nothing much, just a lot to process, you know," he replied, dodging the question once more. That night, as we drove away in a car adorned with just married signs and tin cans rattling behind us, I looked at my new husband. He was staring out of the window, lost in a world of his own, and for the first time, I felt a pang of dread about the life I had just committed myself to. But like any optimist trapped in a romantic ideal, I told myself things would get better, not knowing that this was just the first chapter in a long tale of deception, heartbreak, and ultimate retribution following the wedding. We moved into my house, a spacious place I had bought before we met, owing to my stable, high-paying job. Adam, a regular office worker, didn't earn much, but I was never one to judge a man by his paycheck. My philosophy was that love and compatibility mattered far more than financial equations. For a while, everything seemed to align with that utopian belief. Initially, Adam seemed like the perfect partner. He was affectionate, at least superficially, and took an active interest in my work, asking how my day was and even surprising me with dinner once or twice. But as days turned into weeks, the veneer began to wear off. "You're late again," I would remark as he stumbled through the door close to midnight, his breath reeking of alcohol. "Yeah, the office is getting hectic. You know how it is," he'd reply, avoiding my eyes as he quickly made his way to the bathroom, presumably to wash off the evidence of whatever he had really been doing. It was the 5th time he'd come home late in 2 weeks, and this time he looked particularly disheveled. I decided to probe a little deeper. "Adam, is there something going on at work? You've been coming home late so often. I'm getting worried." He sighed as if annoyed by the question. "Look, Olivia, you wouldn't understand. It's office politics, meetings, deadlines. Don't stress over it. His dismissal didn't sit well with me. I have deadlines too, you know. I manage a whole team, but I still try to maintain a balance. Isn't that what we should both be striving for? Adam rolled his eyes. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Just let it go. The word nothing echoed in my head, amplifying my growing suspicions. I had always been perceptive, a quality that had gotten me far in my career. I could read people, get a sense of their motivations, their sincerity or lack thereof. That sense was tingling now more strongly than it had on our wedding day, but I chose to suppress it. Maybe it was pride or perhaps a simple, naive belief that love could overcome all obstacles. Whatever it was, it blinded me to the glaring red flags that were popping up around me. The man whom I had allowed to be my partner in sickness and in health was slowly becoming a stranger. His late nights at the office grew more frequent, and so did his irritability. The laughter and easy conversations that had once filled our home were gradually replaced by a tense silence. I found myself walking on eggshells, choosing my words carefully to avoid igniting another argument over the smallest of issues. Our physical intimacy dwindled too. Adam always had an excuse, whether it was stress from work or just plain exhaustion. But the worst part was the emotional disconnect. The man who had once talked about growing old with me seemed increasingly disinterested in even discussing how our day went. I didn't know then what was unraveling before me, but what was clear was that our honeymoon phase had unceremoniously ended, giving way to a harsh reality that I was yet to fully comprehend. When the 2 lines appeared on the pregnancy test, a surge of emotions overwhelmed me. I was excited, terrified, but most of all, hopeful. The idea of bringing new life into the world with Adam made my heart swell. I thought, maybe just maybe, this miracle would be the catalyst that reignited the love and affection that seemed to have dwindled between us. I waited for him to get home, rehearsing how I would break the news. I imagined his eyes lighting up, mirroring the joy I felt. I was so lost in these musings that I didn't hear him come in. When I finally realized he was there, sitting on the couch flipping through TV channels, I approached him with the pregnancy test hidden behind my back. Adam, can you turn off the TV for a second? I have something important to tell you, I said. He sighed and put the remote down. What is it now? With shaking hands, I revealed the pregnancy test. We're going to have a baby, Adam. Actually, babies. The doctor confirmed it's twins. The room fell silent. The expression on Adam's face was not what I had envisioned. Instead of joy or even a simple smile, what I saw was a strange mix of incredulity and, to my shock, annoyance. Twins? Are you sure? He finally said, breaking the silence that had thickened the air between us. Yes, the ultrasound confirmed it. Isn't it wonderful? I replied, my voice cracking as I sought to find some semblance of the happy reaction I had expected. His eyes narrowed as he spoke. Great, more mouths to feed. Those words landed like a punch in the gut. I stood there, staring at the man who was supposed to be my life partner, trying to understand how he could react so coldly to something so monumental. Adam, what's going on? This should be happy news for both of us. Why are you acting like it's the end of the world? I asked. Adam slumped back on the couch, running his fingers through his hair as if weighed down by some unbearable burden. Look, Olivia, this is a big deal. It's not just a happy new situation. It changes everything. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Changes everything. You make it sound like our lives are ruined. These are our children, Adam, our family. He looked at me, his eyes void of the warmth and affection that had drawn me to him in the first place. I need time to process this, okay? I nodded, the lump in my throat making it hard to speak, as I walked away. I couldn't help but feel that the unwanted miracle of our unborn twins had just magnified the widening rift between us. For the first time, I began to truly worry about the kind of father Adam would be, the kind of family we would become. I went to bed that night, my mind swirling with a storm of uncertainties. The excitement I had initially felt was now tainted by Adam's unsettling reaction. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, my hand instinctively going to my still flat belly. Am I bringing my children into a broken home? I wondered. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Adam snoring softly beside me, emotionally distant as ever. The enormity of my situation settled over me like a dark cloud, and I found myself questioning not just my marriage, but the life that was growing inside me. It was the miracle I had always dreamed of, but one that had distressingly underscored the disquieting truth about the man lying next to me. The weeks following the revelation of my pregnancy were far from the blissful, love-filled days I had once fantasized about. As my belly grew, so did the chasm between Adam and me. The man who had promised to be my rock, my partner in this incredible journey, was nowhere to be found emotionally, or sometimes even physically. As my pregnancy advanced, the housework began to pile up. Floors needed sweeping, dishes gathered in the sink, and laundry formed an untamed mountain. One day, after I'd spent an exhausting day at work, Adam strolled into the living room, kicked his shoes off, and plopped onto the couch. Adam, can you please at least put your shoes away? I asked, struggling to keep the fatigue out of my voice. He scoffed. You're home all day. Why can't you do it? I was at work, Adam, and I'm carrying twins. A little help wouldn't hurt, I pleaded. He looked at me as if scrutinizing my words and then let out an exasperated sigh. Olivia, I don't have time for this. I've got to leave for another business meeting. Another one? You've been away for the last 3 nights. When do you plan on helping around here? I questioned. When you stop complaining, he retorted, grabbing his coat and heading for the door. The days became a series of these confrontations, each one more bitter than the last. His late nights grew more frequent, and when he was home, he became increasingly irritable. Arguments erupted over the most trivial matters, and more than once, he seemed almost disdainful of my pregnancy, as if it was an inconvenience he hadn't signed up for. It all came to a head one chilly fall day when Adam declared that the garden needed cleaning, and it was my job to do it. Despite being visibly pregnant and the temperature dipping, he locked me outside to make sure the work got done. I can't believe you're doing this, Adam. It's freezing, and I'm pregnant, I protested. You'll manage. It's not rocket science, he snorted, locking the sliding door behind him. While I was outside, teeth chattering and hands soiled from the work, I noticed through the window that Adam was packing a suitcase. I have to go on a week-long business trip, he said curtly when he finally let me back in, ignoring my disheveled, frozen state. You can handle things here, can't you? He asked, not waiting for an answer before leaving. During his absence, I stumbled upon the grim reality that half his belongings were missing. I scoured the house in panic and discovered the safe was empty. A total of $250,000 I had saved up over the years had vanished. My calls to him went unanswered. That was the last straw. As I sat there surrounded by the life we had supposedly built together, the walls felt like they were closing in on me. I was overwhelmed by a cascade of feelings, betrayal, hurt, but mostly a simmering, righteous anger. It was time to accept that our relationship was not a two-way street. It was a dead end, and I was the only one who had been bringing anything to the table, the love, the support, and now even my hard-earned money. It had all been siphoned off by the man I had entrusted with my heart. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the storm that was about to come. It was time to change the rules of this twisted game. It was time for me to take back control of my life, and, more importantly, secure a future for the lives growing inside me. Little did Adam know, he had just ignited a fuse, and I was about to explode in a way he never saw coming. As the week crawled on, each day felt like a lifetime. But I wasn't idle. I was plotting. Adam had taken advantage of my love, my trust, and my resources. He had turned his back on me at the most vulnerable point in my life. But he'd forgotten one critical thing. I was his boss's daughter, and he was still on the company payroll. I arranged a meeting with my father and walked into his office with a file of evidence I had collected. Late-night texts with unidentified numbers, receipts for luxury hotel stays when he was supposedly working late, and most importantly, bank statements that highlighted the missing $250,000. Dad, we need to talk about Adam, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil within me. My father looked up, concern etching his features. What's going on, Olivia? I handed him the file. He's been cheating, lying, and he's stolen from our safe. He can't continue to work here. My father leafed through the papers, his eyes narrowing with each page. This is serious, Olivia. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure about anything. He needs to go, Dad, not just from my life, but from this company. My father sighed, his hand rubbing the bridge of his nose. All right, I'll handle it from here. He won't set foot in this office again. Thank you, Dad, I said, feeling the first wave of relief wash over me. The next part of my plan was to secure my financial and legal standing. I contacted the police and formally reported the theft. I knew it would be a long process, but the wheels of justice were finally in motion. When Adam returned a week later, drunk and in the company of a strange woman, I was ready. The house was locked, and I had packed his remaining belongings in a box that sat outside the front door. What the hell is this, Olivia? He yelled, banging on the door, his words slurring. I'd opened the door a crack, not allowing him to enter. It's over, Adam. You're fired from your job. I've reported the theft, and I want you out of my life. His eyes widened in disbelief, quickly turning into fury. You can't do this to me. Before I could react, he punched me in the face. Pain exploded across my cheek, but it was overshadowed by a surge of adrenaline and resolve. That's assault, Adam. Another charge to add to your growing list, I said, my voice steady despite the pain. His face paled, realizing the gravity of his actions. You're going to regret this, Olivia. I already regret ever meeting you. Now get out, I said firmly. He picked up the box, glaring at me one last time before stumbling away into the night. As I closed the door, my body shaking from the confrontation, I realized that this was just the beginning. Adam had unleashed a side of me he'd never expected to see, and now he would face the consequences of his actions. I touched my swelling belly, making a silent promise to my unborn children. Their mother was no pushover, and their father would soon understand the extent of his mistakes. Revenge had only just begun, and I was far from done. I had the law on my side, a supportive family, and a fierce maternal instinct that would stop at nothing to protect my future world. Adam had underestimated me for the last time, and as I went through the motions to legally dissolve our marriage, press charges, and reclaim what was mine, I knew one thing for sure. The hunter had become the hunted, and I was not going to miss my shot. The courtroom was cold, sterile, a fitting arena for the final chapter of a marriage that had turned just as icy. I was seated next to my attorney, files and evidence laid neatly on the table in front of us. Across the room was Adam, disheveled and visibly nervous, flanked by his own legal counsel. Mrs. Olivia Davis, you may present your case, the judge intoned, turning toward me with a nod. My attorney began laying out the chain of events, punctuated by irrefutable evidence, text messages, financial statements, and even medical records documenting the physical abuse. How do you plead to these allegations, Mr. Adam Davis? The judge asked, his gaze shifting across the room. Adam's attorney whispered something in his ear before replying, Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty to these allegations. The audacity boiled my blood, but I remained calm, composed. This was a battle I was more than prepared for. Very well, proceed with your arguments, the judge instructed. Over the next hour, each side presented their case. Adam's lawyer tried to paint me as an overreacting, controlling spouse. They questioned the authenticity of the texts and claimed the missing money was used for joint household expenses, a blatant lie. Finally, it was my turn for the rebuttal. Your Honor, I would like to call Mr. Adam Davis to the stand. Adam looked visibly shaken but complied, swearing on the Bible before sitting. Mr. Davis, you claim the $250,000 missing from our joint account was for household expenses. Can you please provide any evidence or receipts validating that claim? He stammered, I don't have them with me right now. Isn't it true that you have been staying at luxury hotels when you claim to be on business trips? Isn't it true that you have been engaged in extramarital affairs during our marriage? Adam glanced nervously at his lawyer, who signaled him to remain quiet. So you refuse to answer? I pressed. The room hung heavy with tension. The judge broke the silence. Your silence speaks volumes, Mr. Davis. After what seemed like an eternity, the judge finally spoke. Given the overwhelming evidence presented by Mrs. Davis, I am ruling in favor of the plaintiff. Mr. Davis, you are hereby required to pay $500,000 in damages for emotional and physical abuse, as well as for the theft of marital assets. This court also grants Mrs. Davis full custody of the unborn children. The marriage between Olivia and Adam Davis is officially dissolved. As the gavel came crashing down, so did the wall that had been suffocating me for months. I looked across the room at Adam, his face a mixture of disbelief and defeat. Thank you, Your Honor, I said, my voice unwavering, finally free from the shackles of a loveless, toxic marriage. As I walked out of the courtroom, a new chapter in my life was about to begin. Adam had underestimated me, belittled me, and tried to break me. But I emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined. The woman walking out of that courtroom was not the same one who had walked in, and she was never looking back. The battle was won, but the war had just begun. And this time, I was armed not just with the law, but with the fiercest weapon of all, unyielding resolve. I had 2 lives growing inside me and a newfound purpose nourishing my soul. My revenge was complete, yet it was only the beginning of a life where I would never again be underestimated. As I stepped out into the crisp air, my lawyer congratulated me. You did well, Olivia, he said. No, I replied, touching my belly softly. We did well. And with that, I walked away, leaving behind a shattered past for a future filled with hope, strength, and most importantly, love for myself and for the beautiful lives I was about to bring into this world.